Good afternoon. Welcome to April's Director's Cut. Thank you for tuning in. We'll begin with Director of Mineral Resources, Dr. Helms.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you to everyone who has tuned in. We hope you stay tuned in till the very end. We have a video and some information to share with you about the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference that's coming up the middle of next month. So we're excited about that and hope that you'll take advantage of that event. We're looking at February oil and gas production and sort of an update or up-to-date information about federal rulemaking and some of the impacts there. But looking back a couple of months to February production, it was a very good month for the state, recovering from the late December, early January winter weather. February was a pretty good month. We achieved 1.25 million barrels a day. Was a 13% increase in oil production, and along with that, gas production jumped to 3.36 billion cubic feet a day, a 12% increase in natural gas production, meaning that gas oil ratio stayed flat again. And again, that's a temporary phenomenon, but we do like to call attention to it and let people know that once we really begin to develop the tier 2 and tier 3 geology in earnest, we'll see that gas oil ratio begin to increase again. Oil prices very strong of recent. February we finished just 1% below the $70 that we use for our revenue forecast. North Dakota market price in February was $69.39 a barrel. I think Justin will still have a little bit to say about the congestion at Clearbrook and what's causing that, and that too we think is a temporary phenomenon and will pass. Today we are at $76.50 for North Dakota Light Sweet and $85 for WTI. So we're right in that $80 range for North Dakota Light Sweet crude oil, and so that's a very good price. That's well above what's needed to maintain and slowly grow our rig count. Looking at rig count, we were at 38 in February, jumped to 40 in March. Today, 36, but a day-to-day number still kind of stuck in those upper 30s. Although we have been told by companies, by operators, that they're looking to add a couple of rigs as we get into the summer drilling season. Wells permitted remain pretty consistent. March completions fell off pretty dramatically. So we had 92 completions in February and only 56 in March. And that's not enough to sustain and to grow production. We think, again, that is a temporary thing. The weather in March was not really very conducive to a lot of truck traffic and movements, particularly in late March, where we had the return of winter weather. My grandmother always used to say, in like a lamb, out like a lion, and that's what we experienced this year. Waiting on completion wells, still at that 300 and less, so the duck well inventory is really non-existent. We haven't gotten back to that record well count, active well count yet, so that tells you a little bit about how winter weather impacts the state of North Dakota. But we're very close to setting records in terms of active wells again. 88% of the producing wells are Bakken and Three Forks, and what is the number? 97% of the production is from Bakken and Three Forks. Good activity on Fort Berthold Reservation with 7 rigs running, but very few wells being completed. Only 1 well completed in between January and February. So the inventory is building, and there's a backlog behind gas capture and behind federal rights of way to move that oil and gas off the reservation. Down to 12 frac crews today. So again, as we're coming out of winter weather and we're looking at road restrictions or weight restrictions on the roads, we're seeing truck activity, anything associated with heavy trucks. That activity is down a little bit. Before we go to gas capture, I want to call your attention to something I think is very significant. At the end of February, right at the end of February, we exceeded 5 billion barrels of oil from the Bakken and Three Forks formations. And that's pretty significant because North Dakota's total cumulative from all pools is 6.9 billion. So 1.9 billion from all the other formations and pools in the state, dominantly the Mission Canyon, but 5 billion barrels from the Bakken and Three Forks, putting us at that 6.9 billion barrel mark. We've talked a lot recently about what that means. We think with full development and with the utilization of our natural gas resources, dominantly finding in-state utilization potential or prospects, that we'll be able to move that to 9 or 10 billion ultimately with primary recovery only. Looking at gas capture, went very well. So the volume of gas flared down, the gas capture numbers up a couple of percent, or yeah, pretty close to 2%. Continue to have some struggles in 4 areas, actually 5 areas around the state. Charleston has finally exceeded that 91% standard that we have for the Industrial Commission, that benchmark, but it still has a ways to go to catch up with the other fields. The good news is that this summer there will be line looping taking place across those Forest Service lands, and we're going to see Charleston come off that list. But we do have issues in the Lone Butte Ranch Creek area, which is down near the north unit of Theodore Roosevelt National Park. We've got issues out in the Trenton Painted Woods area with inadequate gas gathering and gas processing out there. And then up in the northern Williams County, southern Divide County area, up around Zoll and Hanks and up in that area. So we're pretty focused on those. We had a meeting yesterday with an operator, and we're going to be pushing operators and gas processing folks to double their efforts to increase the gas gathering and processing in those areas. The federal rule business just continues to rain down upon us. And so today I saw the new BLM leasing rule is being released. Late last week, the new BLM waste prevention, venting, and flaring rule was released. Earlier, we saw the methane waste emission charges. That proposed rule was released for comment, and a lot of activity from the EPA on performance standards for new and existing oil and gas facilities. We're pushing back on all of those, and we're hopeful that we can stop much of the damage from those new federal rules during the time that we can approach Congress and the courts to overturn the illegal portions of those rules. So that's really our production and Department of Mineral Resources report. February, a very good month for the oil and gas industry in North Dakota. 2024 is shaping up to be really a very good year for the industry, with production growth, with a strong and vibrant industry, and continuing to add billions of barrels of oil to the state's economy and to the nation's economy. So with that, Bridget, do we have any questions that have come in?
Yes, please.
All right.
That they just sent through email.
Mhm.
So her question, Star, from SP Global, she's asking, are you disappointed that the upcoming BLM sale next Tuesday, only 8 parcels are located in North Dakota? One is it in Montreal, the other 7 in McKenzie County, and she has a few others.
Yeah, so let me first speak to the upcoming sale, which I believe is in June. And that is a very disappointing list of parcels for the June sale, with really only one or two parcels that are of high value. I am encouraged by the October sale list, which I think was just put out for comment. 20 parcels are potentially going to be listed for that sale, and they are all medium to high priority parcels for the state of North Dakota. They're all either in spacing units that already are partially developed and have very good wells in them, or have good wells as the offsets. I think there's only a couple of parcels there that we would put in the medium potential category. And so 18 of the 20 parcels that are out there for potential listing in the October sale are good parcels. They're very important to future development. I think several of them are under the Van Hook arm, and of course the wells under the Van Hook arm are really great wells. It's going to take some extended reach wells in order to reach them, maybe some 4-mile laterals, but we know with the new technology that's doable. So disappointed in the June sale, but the October sale really looks much better, and we think that our efforts through the federal court system and the push with the BLM has turned that thing around. We would love to see 50 parcels a quarter, and we've seen quarters when 50 or 51 parcels were offered, but very happy to go from 7 to 20.
I believe you answered her second question, but it was, are the parcels at least in productive areas of those counties? And then the last one is about how many parcels per BLM sale could there be feasible offered?
Yeah, so let me just touch on that again. So only a couple of the parcels in the June sale are high value parcels, but we've seen, like from the March sale, what kind of revenue those can generate. In the March sale, we had 2 high value parcels that each brought in over $21,000 an acre. And so only a couple of really good parcels in the June sale, but almost all of the 20 parcels in October are high value. That's going to be a great sale if they follow through. And then lastly, we've seen quarters when 51 parcels were auctioned off. So we know what's possible. And we're still not even at half that rate.
And then we have another question coming from Georgina with Reuters. She's asking, why or how does M&A pressure the rig count?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. What typically happens with these mergers and acquisitions is what we've seen, particularly with the Cord Enerplus acquisition and the Chevron Hess acquisition. Their drilling budgets are disrupted, especially if they're both active Bakken companies. They have a tendency to go back to the drawing board and reorganize their rig schedule and reprioritize. And then you have an entirely new rig schedule trying to coordinate with the midstream folks to come up with gas capture plans. So you tend to see the merger of two very different rig schedules and rig contracts. And so everything gets reprioritized there, and then they have to follow through with the midstream companies on that reorganized rig schedule. So typically, we'll see 1 or 2 rigs, fall off the schedule short term, and even longer term until the merger is completed and you have a consistent team working on the drilling permitting and the rig schedules.
Thank you. That was the last question.
All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. A good month for our oil and gas industry in North Dakota, and we really think this is going to be a great year. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. And that was the Williston Basin back in Petroleum Conference, which is happening next month, between the 14th to the 16th of next month. And now we have up Director of Pipeline Authority, Justin Kringstad.
All right, well, thank you, Bridget. And again, good afternoon, everyone. Just again, another reminder for the event coming up next month. I'm looking forward to it. I know it's a phenomenal time, tons of great conversations, great presentations. So if you're not already registered, I would encourage you to get that done as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll let my material get queued up here, and then we'll get rolling right away with kind of our neighboring states production. So on slide 2, we can take a peek. We got some updated numbers from the eastern Montana as well as South Dakota. Both of those states seen a bit of a downtick in the month of January, similar to what North Dakota saw percentage-wise. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so I do anticipate that both of those states will see again just a slight uptick as we get the February and March data and start to roll out of the winter time. And slide 3, that's just there for comparison for historical context. We look at slide 4, again on the lower portion of that, just a spot check on the GORs, flattish, which is what we've been expecting. And we do continue to expect that throughout a good piece of 2024 here before the math starts catching up with us and we start seeing that trend upwards again. And then the month-to-month changes just for, again, reference. No surprises there coming out of that tough January winter weather. And as we look forward, March, when those numbers do start rolling in, we did have some additional snow events during the month of March, or that first half. So we may be looking at some winter constraints and winter challenges again when those March numbers start to come out. Slide 5, taking a look at the overall transportation. One thing we did see a very slight upward tick in the movement of crude by rail out of North Dakota. We'll dive into that here in a moment. Slide 6, just looking at the overall trends, though, continue to favor the pipelines. Pricing wise, that blue dotted line, that's the Brent WTI spread that was going north of that $5. So there was some pricing pressure. Making barrels that were not committed to one of those pipeline systems have some of that flexibility. And we did see that upward tick in crude by rail. When we look at what refiners were paying for the latest numbers out of January, you can see PADD 1, PADD 5, especially that PADD 5 market, over $11 uptick in pricing of what refiners are paying. There's always an upside to that PADD 1, PADD 5, and a lesser so to PADD 3, but this is a pretty large spread. And so what we started seeing happen late in 23, and it's continued throughout the first part of 2024, was pricing, particularly on Canadian volumes, coming out with the TMX delays. That synthetic crude oil that the Bakken competes with in the Midwest really being hammered. It had a real strong run throughout much of 23. It traded at a premium to WTI for that Canadian blend. And then again, late in the year, the market started putting downward pressure as those barrels come into the Midwest, competes against that Bakken barrel. And my theory there is that we were seeing some downward pressure on Bakken pricing as well. The good news on that is that we saw in March, SCO, synthetic crude oil in Canada, go back to a premium over WTI. We're starting to see some of that pricing uptick, and I'll in a moment here, I'll dive in a little bit deeper on that. But those rail volumes that I was talking about, just a slight uptick month over month. Where they were headed, the EIA, this is just looking at general trends of direction. We did see an uptick in January in PADD 1 movements, but a continued overall dominance in that PADD 5 up in the Pacific Northwest for those Bakken barrels. And this is that graphic on slide 10 that I was just referencing. We have seen the Clearbrook pricing improve, so a nickel below WTI as of the latest pricing data. And then the forward curves are getting back into the positive side here starting in that May, June, July. So we have seen kind of that pendulum swing and trying to get those Bakken barrels back into that premium position above WTI, which is always great news for the Bakken and keeping it competitive with the other plays around the U.S. Imports, exports, very consistent, nothing too dramatic to touch on slide 11. Slide 12, again, back into that kind of trend that we've seen now for much of 2023 and now coming into 2024, right around that 5% flaring. And the reasons for it, very consistent, that continued challenge of how do we keep those wells that are connected, how do you maximize the amount of flow through those gathering lines through compression, pigging, looping, all the different strategies that are being implemented out in the field. And then slide 13, again, just for historic context. So as we continue forward, that gray line at the top, that uses the right-hand axis, that's just our overall gas production. We do anticipate that as we move out of winter that we'll be back certainly in that record-setting level throughout much of 2024. Good news is coming out of that lull in January, February gas connections right on pace. So that's great. This is great to see every month that we're not seeing the industry fall behind at all in the natural gas connections out in the field. Slide 15, the EIA did put some upward movement in their oil price outlook. And so they see prices really north of $80 for the next roughly year and a half here as we head towards the end of 2025. So that is stronger pricing. We're seeing it in the marketplace, $85 closing out today, which is very, very strong. That is very healthy for the economics of the Bakken and attracting that interest and that activity. Going forward, this will continue to be front and center. How do we keep pace with the gas challenges that are ahead of us? I think long term, this will be the one key factor that we're going to have to stay in front of so that we don't start falling behind and start seeing this put pressure on investment decisions here in North Dakota. When we look at some of the interstate projects going on, I will quickly note down in the southeast corner of the state, it's been great to see some pictures coming in of pipe showing up for that Wahpeton project that you see down in the circled in the southeast corner of North Dakota. Again, not directly a Bakken project, but that is a very, very key project for the state of North Dakota. So we're excited to see that happen. And as the pipe shows up and construction crews, and that's planned to be a heavy construction season and then have that done by the end of the year. When we look at our residue challenges in the state, trend continues. I'm anticipating by the end of this year that will be north of 90% market share on the northern border system. Again, emphasizing the importance of getting additional projects coming online as quickly as possible. We're still working through FERC on the Bison Express expansion, and then very actively working on the next set of solutions, both in-state and interstate. It will likely be a number of months before anything's ready to go public on larger scale pipeline systems, but things are certainly in the works, and there's a lot of interest in figuring out what's going to be the next big project to assist the basin. And then lastly, just highlighting again the BTU situation on northern border. Again, this is of interest to a lot of parties as it relates to ethane rejection, ethane capture, and what the market is doing. So I like to throw this in and just keep folks informed on where that's at. So with that, Bridget, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jess.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.